Hello, everyone, and welcome back to live coverage of Eternal Week in Prague. We are back with the top 8 of the Vintage event. So 120 something players narrowed down to the last 8, and we have some really cool decks for you. Let's take a look at the prizes first to tell you what the players are actually playing for. So we already told you a couple times in the Legacy event, the first place finisher got to bring home a nice oversized copy of Force of Will. In Vintage, it gets even better. The winner is going to be able to take home this oversized painting of Black Lotus with special art, on top of everybody in the top 8 also getting a special copy of this Mental Misstep. And I believe there are also 3 more oversized cards for everybody who finishes in the top 4. So we're gonna try to find out for you exactly what those cards are. I think for Legacy it was Wormcoil Engine, Chalice of the Void, and one more card. Maybe they're the same for Vintage. We're gonna find out soon. Let's take a look at the bracket of the top 8 now. So I think we're gonna be covering the first match between the 1st and 8th seed. So we have Esper Tinker playing against Dimir Storm. Table 2 is Grixis Control playing against Oath of Druids. Then we have Dimir Lurus, Martin Lummer representing the Czech Republic there, playing against AJ on Dimir Lurus. So that's going to be the mirror of the 2 relatively fair blue decks. And the last match is going to be Oath of Druids playing against the popular French streamer Elliot Bussa on Hollow Wine. Philip, what do you make out of these decks?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of Dimir, a lot of blue as well. And by a lot, I mean, everything except for Elliot. I mean, actually, no, Elliot doesn't generate mana, but he plays a lot of forces. So very blue-centric. I'm personally really excited to see how Dimir Storm does and how Elliot does on Hollow Vine. So these are the 2 decks I will be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, Hollow Wine was had some very exciting gameplay in the match you guys covered earlier in the tournament. Yeah, I think we're ready with the first match. Esper Tinker playing against Dimir Storm. What can you tell us about these decks, Philip?
Yeah, so Esper Tinker, Esper combo, or Esper in general, is a deck where you have every usual suspect, the Moxen, Bolas' Citadel, and Tinker, Time Walk, Yawgmoth's Will, Demonic Tutor. So the usual suspects. On top of that, you've got the Time Vault combo, and Disruption in the forms of Force of Will, Force of Negation, also double Spell Pierce main deck, and double Teferi. So we will be leaning way more into the linear nature of this blue deck rather than purely reactive like we've seen in the Lurus shells.
So pretty much a lot of card selection, all the fast mana in the format you can play, and I guess the end game is tinkering out the Bolas' Citadel, trying to find the Manifold Key plus Time Vault combo. What about the Dimir Storm deck on the other side? Who has a pretty good start there. Francisco started with double Mox and Underground Sea. I believe there's a Time Walk in his hand and a Dark Ritual. Is this gonna be one of those turn 1 kills?
Or potentially turn 1, but kinda turn 2 when he Time Walks himself and gets another turn. But he might. I'm not sure if there is like a proper payoff.
Wow.
But it might get Spell Pierced with 2 copies in the deck.
We mentioned that earlier in the tournament. Vintage is a format where there's very little downside to playing all these fast mana artifacts in your deck, and everybody gets to do that. All these Moxes, Black Lotus, Soul Ring, Time, Mana Vault, Soul Ring, all that kind of stuff. So cards like Daze and Spell Pierces, which you see in Legacy, are typically not played as often. But Lucas is ready with that Spell Piercer here, targeting the Time Walk. Francisco does want to fight over it, casting his copy of Mental Misstep. There is a force in Lucas's hand. How much do you think he wants to fight over that?
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think much, because this is this type of Time Walk that's kind of like an Explore, right? Like 0 mana Explore, because he hasn't really progressed his game plan. If he makes a land drop, that makes it at least somehow worth it. Otherwise, it would just draw a card effect. Force of Will, Brainstorm, Saga, Wasteland, Yog's Will. So strong hand.
Yeah, it's a big difference if you're casting Time Walk on turn 2 just to draw a card and play another land. And sometimes there are these situations where you have Urza Saga in play, making constructs, you're attacking the opponent, and you're using Time Walk to effectively deal 10 extra damage. But oftentimes in Vintage, at the start of the game, it is a race to whoever can have a better start, put more of these fast artifacts into play, Urza Saga, Moxes, try to get more mana, and then use the counter magic spells to try to um, protect your advantage.
Yeah, so another great example of taking advantage of Time Walk would be if he had played turn 1 Saga, Time Walked, and then had the construct ready on turn 2, but his turn 1, kind of, then actually progressing the game plan thanks to the extra land drop. Well, in this case, it won't make much of a difference. However, it's a Dimir Storm deck that wants to play, Besiege the Mirror into Yog's Will and Tendrils of Agony. But now we've got the Saga subgame. The Saga subgame that we have seen a lot, and we've got Time Walk. So the situation I said, right? Turn one Saga, Saga into then untap and have the constructs available immediately.
Wow, there's also the fairy. Yeah, so this is a very interesting situation. Lucas pretty much using the Time Walk as an explorer, like you mentioned. He doesn't want to get two-line number 3. Maybe he wants to use that Saga as fast as possible to try to get something out of his deck. Decides to cast a Brainstorm here.
Yeah, with no way to fetch. So because he could have just made a construct, he might realize that constructs are not the way to win this match. We have open deck lists in the top 8, so he knows what he's playing against, because otherwise he might not. Right? He would just think, okay, just blue Saga deck.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the Twitch chat, not just in the Twitch chat, that are curious about the top 8 deck list, about the deck list from the entire tournament. For example, we have Andrea Mengucci finishing in the top 16 with a colorless shops deck. So I'm going to make sure that the deck lists get posted publicly in a second.
Okay, so what I see is Wasteland on the Saga. So neither player really getting to take full advantage of it. Francisco takes a draw. That was a blue card, I think. Double checking what Luca has in hand. And Lucas holding up Force of Will. Yog's Will available. Oh, I see Shieldred. I think we'll going to go Shieldred off of Dark Ritual into a Force of Will that we know.
Wow.
So basically, the only blue card to pitch was Brainstorm, which had been cast. So Francisco is basically saying, show me that you've drawn a blue. However, one could argue that maybe he would not have brainstormed had he not drawn a blue, but it actually resolves even though there is a blue card. This is wild.
Manifold Key. It's really funny. We started Legacy Top 8 today by covering a Rakdos Scam player with Teamer Rhinos making it all the way to the finals, and now we're covering the top 8 of Vintage, and there's a Shieldred in play. It's like we're covering Modern again.
Okay, so now we're floating mana. Let's search something up. Lucas has got that Teferi. Teferi bounce Shieldred would be decent. Properly time walking the opponent who cannot even recast Shieldred. So let's see what the find is in this position. It's the White Mox. It is the White Mox. Okay, so we're not going for a line like Black Lotus, Cracket, Yog's Will, replay cards. Playing it a bit slower. So now the White Mox enables Teferi to be played off of the floated mana, blue, and the Mox. And we've got another Wasteland, so we can Wasteland that Underground Sea, putting Francisco in a really bad position. Or Black Lotus is the top deck even. Oh my god. So Lucas has bounced Shieldred, has got the Teferi, he's drawn... Okay, he doesn't have another blue for Force of Will.
Yeah, and reminder that this format is Vintage. There's a lot of card selection spells, there's a lot of tutors. And that Manifold Key in play is already half of the Infinite Turns combo. So if Francisco at any point is able to find a time vault, he would be able to start getting infinite turns.
I think Lucas is making some scary calculations because he plays Tolarian Academy, adds 2 mana because of the 2 artifacts, cracks Lotus, and he might immediately play Yog's Will off of that Lotus. So something that started off as a pretty innocuous draw. To be fair, now it looks like Lucas is the Storm deck.
Storm count is 3.
Yeah. So now we're playing Time Walk of the 2 floated mana, I assume.
Yeah,
so we might finish. Yeah.
Yavim's Will, if you have a Black Lotus, is just one of the most powerful cards you can be casting.
Yeah, and we might leave Lotus uncracked, actually, and just pass the turn to himself. Yeah, I think he passes the turn to himself now.
Passes the turn to himself. That's a funny way to put it. Yeah, he does have an extra turn. Unfortunately for him, doesn't really get too big of an advantage, but draws the Tinker, probably the best card in his deck.
Wow!
Doesn't have enough mana to do that. Yeah, that Tolarian Academy is going to be able to float 2, add another mana from the Mox. That's 3. Tinker the Mox away. Francisco says, okay, well, I didn't want to see that. What are you going to get? And most likely we're going to see a Bolas' Citadel here.
Yes, stop. He's already dead. We still have a land drop available, so he can also wasteland the Underground Sea on top of everything else he's going to do.
Yeah, turns out all these restricted cards are indeed pretty busted, and it's not just the Power 9. Takes a look at the top card. 17 life. That should be more than enough to do something wild here.
He wastelands you with Shieldred in hand. Also, it's just a one-off.
Wow. So what does this tell you? Look at the top card with Bolas' Citadel and then use Wasteland from my hand and not do anything. That has to be a counter on the top, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, it doesn't spell anything exciting for Francisco because now he knows that on top of that, what's going on, there is a counter spell. So there is Opposition Agent, Force of Will, and Force of Negation in hand, so everything is covered. Yeah, now he has to actually close this game. So when looking at the ways to close the game, I think this Opposition Agent will just go to distance. Just 5 attacks, kill you.
Oh my God. Take 5.
Okay. Allow me to post something in chat. 10th Lorien revealed hardcast.
Does that seem fair to you? Pay no mana, but 5 life to draw 3?
Oh, I would take that deal very, very often.
Yeah. Draws a Swords to Plowshares. There's another Ponder on the top of his deck. And remember, this is Legacy. Players do not typically play that many lands because they have all the fast mana in their deck. All the Moxes, Black Lotus, cards like that. So the chance of Lucas running into 2 lands in a row is not particularly high, especially given that he also has a bunch of card selection spells, cards like Brainstorm, cards like Ponder that he can use to manipulate the top of his library. Tries to shuffle that.
Okay, the chat has actually convinced me that this was not indeed a hard cast because it was for free from Bolas' Citadel. So I will give it to you and just revert to the previous number. Okay, we're at 9. We're at 9. Sorry for the confusion. Let's keep it at proper hard casts. And as I'm saying that, Lucas seems to have everything that he might need to have multiple counter spells, Teferi on the battlefield, Opposition Agent.
Yeah, to be fair, casting it off the top of his deck was the only option he had, since you can only cycle the card from your hand. You can only discard it from your hand. So actually putting it on the stack to draw 5 was the only option that Lucas had at that time. Francisco plays an Underground Sea, passes the turn. So a very unexciting turn for him. And I think he can also, see the writing on the wall. But obviously, you never want to concede. Maybe Lucas is going to play too many spells. Maybe he ends up dying to, Bolas' Citadel into something wild. So if I'm Francisco, this is the top 8. I'm also going to let Lucas do his thing.
Ancestral. And Francisco was like, yeah.
All right, there it is. Okay, so Lucas picks up game number 1, getting that nice thinker off of the top, turns that into Bolas' Citadel, which gives him an incredible advantage, playing a bunch of spells for free off of the top of this deck. I have one more update for you. If you're watching the stream right now, we did just make all the deck lists public. So if you go to MTG Melee and you find maybe there's an entire hub of this entire weekend by JK Entertainment that included not just the Vintage event. There was also the Legacy main event. There was also a pre-modern on Friday. I think today there's also a big modern tournament, and by big I mean several hundreds of players. I think the event has over 300 players. So there's going to be a lot of deck lists available. As we are playing with closed deck lists in the Swiss, we cannot do that earlier than the top 8. But since the players in the top 8 now have each other's deck lists, we have made the deck list public. So if you are curious what the deck lists in Vintage look like, head over to MTG Melee and you're going to be able to check that all right now.
Yeah, and players are sideboarding right now. I think they're already shuffling up. So Dimir Storm, looking at a couple of cards, but Leyline, I don't really think so. No, Dismember, not that good. Portal to Phyrexia, not many cards I would really be excited to side in. And he's looking at a mulligan, while Lucas is looking at Pithing Needle, Fluster, Sol Ring, and Saga crucially.
Yeah, this is Vintage, right? Like you already play all the busted cards in your deck already, and you typically want to focus your sideboard cards on some of these decks that are trying to sort of do something different. So, for example, these Bazaar of Baghdad decks, they're not really trying to cast too many non-creature spells. They're trying to go through their graveyard. They're trying to cast, these cards like Hollow One, these Root Wallas for free. So you typically try to aim a lot of your sideboard cards at these unfair strategies that are playing sort of outside the box.
Okay, I think Lucas hasn't confirmed yet if he's keeping or not. Now Francisco's drawing his opening hand, so let's take a look at that 7. A Sol Ring, Force of Will, Fluster Storm, Shieldred, the One Ring.
Yeah, there's a Time Vault as well, but I don't think there was a single land in there. So Francisco shuffles that back for 5 cards. But remember that this is Vintage. Even a mulligan to 5, especially the London mulligan, where you get to keep the 5 cards you want out of the 7, can lead to something like a turn 1 Tinker into a Bolas' Citadel. There's a lot of crazy openers that you can start on. Although, keep in mind that Lucas is on a Force of Will deck, Force of Negation deck. He does have cards like Flusterstorm and Spell Pierce. So Francisco is going to need to find something good here.
Martin, have you ever shuffled a deck with power cards?
I have. I actually have. I was lucky enough to get some power cards very early on in my Magic career when they were still relatively obtainable. And I did play a couple of local Vintage tournaments just for fun. And
nice.
Yeah, it is a great format. I'm kind of glad that I didn't really get to shuffle them more times now because every time you do that, the cards are super valuable, and every small dent in the cards, every small shuffle crease, something like that, is gonna make the card a lot worse when it comes to the collector value.
Yeah,
so
that is
now
true.
The cards are just safely stored at home, and I'd actually even have them at my own home. But yeah, that was a good decision that I made a long time ago.
I think it's safe to say that if you were to play a deck full of such expensive cards, you really need to use some premium protection sleeves to make sure that nothing happens to them. So let's katana them out with those Moxen. And Moxpel, Sol Ring on a mull to 5.
Okay,
that's decent.
So good opener for Francisco as far as mana goes. But looking at Lucas's hand, he does have a Black Lotus, a mana crypt. Oh my god, this is ridiculous. And if you want to get into Vintage, if watching this makes you as excited as it makes me, you can try Magic Online. Magic Online is a lot more accessible when it comes to Vintage, and I think it roughly costs you the same amount to build a Vintage deck on Magic Online as it costs you to build a Modern or a Legacy deck. So pretty reasonable. Also, there's a lot of uh, rental services these days. So if you want to get into a format like Vintage or Legacy, I would recommend starting on Magic Online.
Okay, and we've got a trigger on upkeep. 3 was rolled. We don't know what was the name, but every seasoned player knows that Tails never fails. So that may have been the choice.
Wow, that's news. That's news for me. Tails never fails. Demonic Tutor picked up for Lucas, and that might be a very exciting card because we know that he gets to turn it into Tinker if he wants to, and with that Black Lotus, he would be able to deploy all of that this turn. So, gonna be interesting seeing what Lucas decides to do. Cracks the Misty first. Probably gets himself a nice Underground Sea. Yeah, it says, you know what? I'm not even gonna shuffle because I'm gonna play this Demonic Tutor now, and we're gonna be doing some more shuffling. Cast the Black Lotus. There it is, Demonic Tutor. And what's your best guess? What is Lucas gonna find?
What is this opening even? I mean, what is
Yeah.
going on? Like, just if somebody just tuned in and they saw Black Lotus, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, and Demonic Tutor on the stack, that's unreal. We might see Tinker get tutored out to then find Bolas's Citadel immediately. Yeah, and I can see Lucas just like, I don't know.
Yeah, remember this is turn 1. I guess Lucas also maybe gets to just find out Time Vault, and since he already has the Manifold Key, he can go for the infinite turns combo. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no reason to try to find Bolas' Citadel if you can go straight up for the combo, right? So we didn't quite see what he got, but I think it was the Time Vault. There it is. And
Wow.
that's the game. Oh my, this is turn 1. Are you kidding me? What is going on? Wow.
Okay, that's vintage. That is vintage indeed.
That is vintage. Oh, no. That was turn 2. Excuse me. That was turn 2. I got a little excited. There was an Underground Sea in play, and also Norza Saga. So that was turn 2.
No worries. It was turn 2.
Yeah. Pretty crazy game there. Lucas takes the match 2-0 with the infinite turns combo. That was the first match of the quarterfinals. I think we have a backup feature match ready for you, though. I think we can go straight into it, maybe?
Let's go.
Question mark for a producer. Okay, there's going to be a couple seconds of a break, so let me use that to plug in a little bit of a shout out for our sponsors. Thanks to Ultimate Guard, who is sponsoring the event. You can head out to ultimateguard.com, and there is a special promo code this weekend. I believe the code is also valid for Monday. So if you go to ultimateguard.com, you can try to take a look at their products. They have all kinds of gaming accessories for us card gamers. Deck boxes, sleeves, binders, whatever you need. And with the special code EternalUG10, you get to save 10% on all your purchases throughout the weekend and also on Monday. But looks like we are here with the second featured quarterfinals between the French streamer Elliot Bazaar, who is on the Hollow Wine deck. So a deck that is using very few actual mana sources because it's not really trying to cast any cards. It usually mulligans into Bazaar of Baghdad. Plus, it has a couple of Wastelands, and I think a Strip Mine usually in that deck as well. On the other side, we have Justin Gennari on the Oath of Druids deck, who is currently, unfortunately for him, only sitting on a Mox Jet. Looks like a lot of his lands have been dealt with Wastelands. Meanwhile, Elliot is enjoying the advantage he's getting by drawing 3 cards a turn, thanks to Bazaar of Baghdad, discarding cards like Squee Goblin, Nubble. There's a Hollow 1 right now, and this is not looking good for
Yeah. Justin seems very behind. Also down a game already. So I would be surprised if Elliot takes it down in a swift fashion, but he's still sculpting his hand. Full graveyard, but also pretty hefty exile zone. Passes the turn with double wasteland up, so Justin, even if he plays a land, it's basic Lotus Petal. And still has to contend with the 4/4. Tabernacle. But Tabernacle isn't as good because Elliot can actually pay.
Yeah, this time Elliot can actually pay. He can also just choose to crack that fetch land and deal with the Tabernacle, but he decides to use that wasteland to float mana instead, returns quadruple squee to his hand.
And Master of Death.
And
So,
Master of Death.
wow. Okay, use Bazaar because why not? And draw Fawn. Oh, and Hollow One on top of that.
Yeah, there's a Basking Rootwalla. He does have some. Wow, I think there's 3 copies of Force of Will and a copy of Force of Negation. So yeah, this game is very much over. Obviously, it's the top 8, so Justin is letting it play out. But with what Elliot has in his hand and in play, I think even if Justin could stack his library, he would probably be in trouble.
Yeah, this is my general rule of thumb. If I stack my deck and I can't win, I'm just probably scooping them up. That's my just general
Right.
rule.
Quick chat for Twitch chat. A quick question for Twitch chat. So, you know what Serum Powder does, right? That's a card that typically shows up in these decks with Bazaar of Baghdad. Because you really want to try to find Bazaar. Your deck is so much more powerful with it that essentially the rule with these decks is you just mulligan until you find Bazaar. Even if you have to go to 2 cards, you just do that. So Serum Powder, if you don't know what it does, go on Google it up, try to find out what the card does. In the meantime, Justin is trying to, slow down the process a little bit, forcing that Hollow One, or forcing forcing one of the creatures. Elliot fights back with his own force, saying, "You know what? I have 3 more in hand. I don't really mind if I have to use one of them here." So 4 creatures in play right now. But back to my question. I actually brought that up a while ago. But do you think you know how exactly the mulligan procedure works? And this is very important for Serum Powder. Justin decides to cast a Mox here with a Polluted Delta, which looked like the start of something possibly big, but he ends up passing the turn. Elliot attacks, Justin concedes. So Elliot moves on to the semifinals. Congratulations to Justin for making the top 8 here, but that's going to be the end of his journey. Congratulations to Elliot for making the top 4. He's had a great weekend as well, and now he is going to be a recipient of one of the oversized cards. And if he wins the event, he's going to get the oversized Black Lotus. So congratulations to him once again. This concludes, I believe, that was the quarterfinals. So this concludes the coverage of the quarterfinal matches. We're going to get ready for the semifinals, and as soon as we're ready, we're going to come right back. And I would estimate, 5 or 10 minutes. Definitely not more than that. So stay tuned, and we're going to be right back.